Chilean carabineros detained several high school students during a rally demanding a new constituent process after the defeat of the Apruebo on September 4th. In Ukraine, the United Nations International Atomic Energy Agency called to put an end to attacks on the Zaporizhzhia plant to prevent a nuclear incident. The United States government affirmed that sanctions imposed against Russia are preventing the operation of the Nord Stream 1 gas pipeline. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with news. Chilean carabineros forces detained several high school students during a mobilization that sought to demand a new constituent process after the defeat of the Apruebo on September 4th. Spokesmen of the student groups have denounced that there were several arrests, some of them of minors, and that anti-riot water trucks were used to disperse the demonstration. The massive march of students stopped in the vicinity of the Palacio de la Moneda, seat of the Chilean executive in Santiago. The mobilization, called Mochilazo, takes place in the framework of changes in Gabriel Boric's government.
Hello, I'm the president of the Lyceum Lastarria. We are mobilizing here because of the non-compliance of the parties, by rejecting or rather forgetting that was that 78% that wanted a new constitution that excited the people, with the rejection to reform, and eventually they have not even be able to present the president of the parties to the president. We are mobilizing as the condemnation of all the high schools that are as active participated, such as Lyceum Lastarria, Lyceum Camila Carvajal, Alexander, Lyceum Cajabal, Lyceum 7. We are all together because, as my colleague said, we are the same in this fight in 2019, and we will be the same in 2022, in being able to vindicate that belongs to us, in what the people decide at the time.
At the same time, President Gabriel Boric made the first cabinet changes after the victory of the rejection in the constitutional referendum. The head of state explained that they are looking for the new cabinet to assume a more intense agenda with presence in regions. Boric emphasized that a real determination is required to lead the required processes and changes. He urged his new ministers to listen and share with the people who expect answers from the executive. Colombian President Gustavo Petro arrived in Buenaventura on Tuesday to assess the situation of violence affecting residents and to adopt measures to protect people's lives. Next to the head of state, among others, were Defense Minister Ivan Velázquez, as well as the Director of the Police, General Henry Sanabria, and other government officials. Along with national and regional authorities, President Petro set up a comprehensive security council and a unified command post to protect the locals. During his visit to Buenaventura, Petro also met with social leaders from the community, such as Leonardo Renteria. In Brazil, former president and presidential candidate Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva headed a campaign coordination meeting together with representatives of Brazil of Hope coalition. After the meeting in the city of Sao Paulo, in a press conference, da Silva referred to the possibility of winning the second round, since according to the polls, his candidacy has 45% of support in voting intentions. Likewise, the presidential candidate for the Workers' Party presented the figures of family debt in the country and assured that it is not enough to win the elections and improve the income of Brazilians, but that he will work to create conditions so that families can negotiate their debts. Lula denounced that he is fighting with adversaries who use fake news and other practices that do not correspond to democracy. In Guatemala, indigenous communities of the Petén department denounced state violence and the usurpation of their ancestral territories. Demonstrators from the 50 communities that inhabit the jungle regions of Laguna del Tigre and Sierra La Condón, declared as protected areas, protested in front of the presidential palace of violence they are being subjected to by the police and the army, who use the fight against drug traffickers as an excuse to destroy their crops and roads to their communities, expel them from their territories, or just kill them. Demonstrators recalled the case of the inhabitants of Luna Larga, evicted 5 years ago and abandoned to their fate between the borders of Guatemala and Mexico. In Guatemala, there's an undetermined number of territories with eviction orders, but the government has failed to guarantee a place for the affected families to live. After a year of the entry into force of Bitcoin as legal currency in El Salvador, several citizens are suffering the devaluation of their assets because of the prolonged fall in its value. President Nayib Bukele launched the project on September 7, 2021. The measure was questioned by the World Bank and the IMF, and the Inter-American Development Bank, which warned about its high instability. The government created the electronic wallet Chivo and granted the equivalent of $30 to each user with 4 million downloads as far of January 2022. With a diaspora of 3 million, Bukele was looking to channel remittances through the app and less through traditional agencies. However, less than 2% of money transfers arrived through digital wallets, which means that there were no benefits, according to the former president of the Central Reserve Bank, Carlos Acevedo.
It was a boom, and all the people wanted to use it. I want to. I see that it increases. I put $20 and now I have 25. So it was good at first, but a year later, people have stopped to use it and to download the application.
In Ecuador, the government and the indigenous movement remain in dialogue despite postponing the opening of new tables until the pending issues are resolved. The Minister of Energy and Mines, Javier Vera Gruanauer, after hours of meeting between the parties, committed himself to give answers to the points addressed in the analysis on renewable resources. The requests are based on specific topics such as mining and oil, as well as reforms to the hydrocarbons law, the Amazon law, among others. Indigenous organizations claim that with more than half of the elapsed time, the dialogue has not progressed beyond meetings and the answers are still up in the air. In Mexico, the families of the miners trapped in a coal mine on August 3rd accepted a compensation and a plan of at least 6 months to recover the remains of their loved ones. The settlement comes after last week President López Obrador guaranteed that the families of the miners would receive compensation from the government, highlighting that many live in poverty. Also, the families of the 10 trapped workers accepted the rescue plan presented by the government and which they had initially rejected for taking several months. Authorities in charge assured that this plan was determined after several geological and geotechnical studies. We're going to take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. In Ukraine, the United Nations International Atomic Energy Agency called to put an end to attacks on the Zaporizhzhia plant to prevent a nuclear incident. After its recent visit to the atomic power plant, the UN Nuclear Agency recommended to establish a security zone around the plant to avoid a possible radioactive disaster. The agency warned that a special storage unit for radioactive waste and fresh nuclear fuel would have been damaged by the attacks. They also warned that if the bombing continued, there could be further damage to equipment and an unlimited release of radioactive materials. Russia's defense ministry spokesperson Igor Konashenkov accuses Ukraine of shelling around the Russian-occupied Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant in order to create a threat of a man-made disaster. There have been repeated attacks in the vicinity, but both Moscow and Kiev have denied responsibility and blamed each other. The site is being assessed by United Nations inspectors because of safety concerns.
A total of 20 shells were fired by Ukrainian artillery, including 3 on the territory of the nuclear power plant. One of the shells hit the roof of Special Building Number 1. The second hit the transition area between Special Building Number 1 and the second power unit. The third one exploded near the tanks for the storage of distilled water near power unit Number 2.
Russian Ambassador Vasily Nebensia said during a Security Council session attended virtually by Rafael Grossi, head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, that the report by the UN nuclear watchdog warning of risk at Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia plant did not blame Kiev for the shelling the site.
We regret that in your report on the safeguards implementation in Ukraine since April to September of this year, which appeared literally a couple of hours ago, the source of the shelling is not directly named. We do understand your position as a head of an international regulator, but in the current situation it's very important to call things by their name.
The United States government affirmed that the sanctions imposed by the West against Russia are preventing the operation of Nord Stream 1 gas pipeline. White House spokesman Karine Jean-Pierre said that the United States and Europe have been working together to ensure sufficient supplies. These statements come in the midst of what has been described as the worst energy crisis in Europe's history, resulting in an increase of more than 30% in energy prices, a figure that sets off alarm ahead of winter as well as contributes to the current high inflation rates. The European Trade Union Confederation warned that rising electricity and gas prices are making the energy bills of millions of workers unpayable. The major trade union organization representing workers at the European level said some 9.5 million working people were already struggling to pay their energy bills, before inflation soared to a record high of 9.1% over 1 year in August in the Eurozone. The European Trade Union Institute reported that from July 2021 to July 2022, the cost of gas and electricity increased by 38% across the bloc, and it keeps on climbing. The union called on governments who will meet at the end of the week in Prague to discuss energy issues to put an end to unsustainable price increases. Portugal unveiled a €2.4 billion package to help households cope with soaring prices, including an energy tax cut. The government said it would offer a one-off payment worth €125 plus €50 per child to each person earning up to €2,700 gross per month. Pensioners will receive additional money worth half their monthly pension as a one-time payment. The money is in addition to a €1.6 billion package announced this year. The government, which has an absolute majority in Parliament, will ask lawmakers to vote for a reduction in value-added tax on electricity from 13 to 6% and will extend a full tax reduction until the end of the year. Prime Minister Costa also announced a cap on rent increases next year to 2% and a freeze on public transport fares. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that the intransigence of new British Prime Minister Liz Truss will be of little help in strengthening the international position of the UK.
Truss. I met with her when she was the head of the Foreign Office in this building at the beginning of the year. She has her own principles that regard the irreconcilability of advocating Britain's interests with considering the position of others, with any aim to seek compromises. I don't think this will help maintain or strengthen the position of this country on the international arena, which has obviously taken a hit since exiting the European Union.
Russian President Vladimir Putin and Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu attended the Vostok 2022 military exercises and met with Chief of Staff Valery Gerasimov at the Sergeyevsky military range. The military drills started on September 1st and are due to take place until September 7th. They are held across several training grounds in Russia and in the waters of its eastern coast. According to Moscow, over 50,000 soldiers and more than 5,000 units of military equipment, including 140 aircraft and 60 ships, are involved in the drills. The military exercises involve several of Russia's neighbors as well as Syria, India, and China. teleSUR will dedicate its coverage of the Football World Cup Qatar 2022 to the figure of Diego Armando Maradona, who accompanied our crew in the last two World Cups. With the football star, we also tour our continent with the show De Sur da Viajero. We want this tribute to have its music. With this in mind, we invite you to write, compose a song for teleSUR's coverage of Qatar 2022 Football World Cup. It must be an original song, never recorded before or published in any media, and free of legal attachments. Record the song in any format, even with your cell phone, and send it as an attachment to comunicaciones@telesurtv.net with the following information: author's name, nationality, and name of the song. The closing date of the call for entries is September 10, 2022. A jury of prestigious musicians and composers from the region will select the winning piece. The prize will be the recording of the song, a video clip, and the wide diffusion of the work. 1 week after the closing of the call, teleSUR will announce the results. More news coming up after a final short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. In Pakistan, over the weekend, villagers around Lake Manchar in the southern part of the country were evacuated before engineers could cut into the lake's embankment to release rising flood water to limit damage. The displaced villagers are complaining that it's been 3 days already and that they have not received any assistance from any authority and that they are sleeping under the open sky. Floods have affected more than 3.3 million people and the devastation has caused $10 billion losses in damage, according to official estimates. The provinces of Punjab, Sindh, Baluchistan, and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa have been the most affected. Most of the fatalities have been women and children. Last week, the U.S. announced $30 million in aid for Pakistani flood victims. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres announced his upcoming trip to Pakistan after the floods devastated the country and called to the international community to support the Pakistani people.
Tomorrow I'll be flying to Pakistan to express my deep solidarity with the Pakistani people and to appeal for massive support of the international community to the Pakistanis in this hour of need after the devastating floods that we are witnessing. There is a lot of attention on the war of Ukraine, but people tend to forget there is another war, the war we are waging on nature, and nature is striking back, and climate change is supercharging the destruction of our planet. Pakistan, Chad, the Horn of Africa, where the drought is causing famine, all these things represent an enormous threat to all of us. Today it is Pakistan, tomorrow it can be anywhere else. To deal with climate change, that is a defining issue of our time, with a business-as-usual approach is pure suicide.
At least 2 people were killed and 10 are reported missing after Typhoon Hinnamnor made landfall early Tuesday in South Korea. The storm entered the island of Jeju before reaching the city of Busan, with large waves and heavy rains that damaged roads and seaside stores. 66,000 homes lost power. Ahead of the storm, more than 600 schools were closed, thousands of people were evacuated, and airlines grounded some 250 domestic flights, although service gradually resumed as the typhoon headed towards Japan. Typhoon Hinnamnor is among the 8th strongest typhoons in South Korea's history in terms of winds, but not the most powerful ever to reach it. It passed through faster than forecast, causing less damage than expected. On Monday, Mexican authorities reported 3 people dead after the passage of Hurricane Kai along Mexican Pacific coast. Kai, which is expected to intensify to Category 2 on the Saffir-Simpson scale this Tuesday, also damaged homes, uprooted trees, and led to rivers overflowing in the state of Guerrero. Winds gusts of up to 90 to 110 kilometers per hour and waves of 3 to 5 meters occurred in the coast of Colima, Jalisco, and Michoacán, also on the coast of Nayarit and Sinaloa. According to the National Hurricane Center forecast, tropical storm conditions are expected in Baja California Peninsula on Wednesday in the U.S., as Kai could intensify in the next 24 hours. On Monday, 2 people were killed and thousands of homes were evacuated as a fast-moving wildfire swelled rapidly in Southern California, the U.S., as a result of a severe heat wave. The Fairwheel fire ignited after 2 p.m. local time and quickly scorched 2,000 acres, destroying at least 7 structures and damaging several more near the city of Hemet in Riverside County. According to California Fire Department, firefighters had contained about 5% as of Monday night. Aside of the 2 fatal victims, a 3rd person was taken to a hospital with serious burns. An extended record-setting heat wave in the west of the U.S. is making conditions more dangerous, with California going under unusually rare temperatures. teleSUR English continues to grow. Its signal now reaches Europe. You can order from your cable dealer or tune it yourself. These parameters that you see on screen are in place since July 1st, and quite soon further changes will be implemented for the signals in the Middle East and Africa. Now more than ever, the world connects to us and our stories are heard in all the faraway nations. This news multi-platform will continue providing truthful content to oppose the hegemonic media's narrative and unfaithfulness to our audience. We have come to the end of this news briefing. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. And now you can also follow us on TikTok at the account at teleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and much more. For teleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.